Guys, welcome back. Please do us a favor by subscribing to the channel and slash the like button so that we can get 1,000 likes. So please, today we have bring you a video to talk about how could the attack take place. So all about the world, whether it's Africa or other countries. So please fasten your seatbelt and listen to this video. You will get the knowledge to know that how could the attack do normally take place. So please watch the video to the end.
2021 was the year of coups. In total, 6 countries experienced at least one attempt, 5 of which were successful. That's as many as the previous 6 years, from 2015 to 20 put together, and over 3 times the 2-decade average. The last time the world saw this many in a single calendar year, in fact, was after the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. The UN Secretary General went so far as to call it an epidemic. Clearly, coups are not a thing of the past. But what's remarkable is how little they've changed. In 1968, political scientist Edward Luttwak released Coup d'etat, a practical handbook, essentially a step-by-step cookbook for would-be dictators. Today, over 50 years later, the same basic recipe is used to seize control of countries like Mali, Guinea, Sudan, and Myanmar. These dictators even look the same as they did in the 60s. So how do coups work? Why do these steps seem to transcend time and place? And what does that tell us about how to prevent them? Sponsored by Storyblocks, where you can find over 1 million high-quality stock videos for all your creative projects. To answer our questions, we're going to have to temporarily inhabit the mind of an aspiring Machiavellian autocrat. Our very first step is to select a target. As Americans learned on January 6th, no country is immune from coups, and it always pays to stay vigilant against them. Still, there are some characteristics that make a coup more or less likely to succeed. We see that in their geographic distribution. Coups are not as common as this chart from earlier might suggest. Rather, a few countries seem to be trapped in a perpetual cycle. Of the countries which have seen at least one attempt since 1950, the average number during that period was 5, or once every 14 years. They've been a regular feature of Thai politics, for instance, since 1912. And this is just a list of the successful ones. If you include failed attempts, there have been at least 30. The Sahel region of Africa, likewise, has been referred to as a coup belt. Since 1950, Sudan has experienced 16, and both Sierra Leone and Ghana, 10. Many of these countries are poor, yes, but not all poor countries are represented here. So what do these in particular have in common? For starters, they tend to have a high concentration of power. As we'll see, coups rarely command a numerical advantage. They're surgical operations, not overwhelming displays of firepower. Our ideal country has a definite political center, a single capital city home to all the administrative and bureaucratic headquarters, aka a single point of failure. The greater the separation of powers, the more branches of government will have to infiltrate. The same is true of redundancy in general. Syria's Assad, for example, maintained not 2, 3, or even 4, but 5 separate intelligence services. One might defect, but it's very unlikely that all 4 will. Besides, someone has to spy on the spies. Next, the ideal target has low political participation. Where revolutions are built on passion, coups, on the other hand, thrive on apathy. Dissatisfaction with the current government, of course, is preferable to satisfaction, but the more important dimension is engagement. Though we'll probably want to package our actions with some ideological window dressing, remember, we, the elite, are performing the coup, not the masses. We're not soliciting rebellion. Quite the contrary, we want to avoid civilian intervention. the population should know very little about politics, and above all, believe their involvement simply doesn't matter. They're all the same anyway, and who am I to change things are music to our ears. Now that we've chosen a target, it's time to move on to step 2, infiltrate. This crucial phase will almost entirely determine our ultimate success or failure. But set down your aviators and take off your beret, because this is largely an academic exercise. Our job is to draw one giant org chart of the current government. This includes everyone in the bureaucracy, military, and party, from the Prime Minister all the way down to his limo driver. Except, unlike one you'd find on the national website or Wikipedia, ours will include only the real sources of power. Corruption and simple mismanagement are likely to have produced a large number of pencil pushers and ceremonial leaders who we can safely ignore. We can cross off, for example, the 80-year-old general who everyone knows is all but retired. Now what we're left with is effectively a map of power. Our next task is to divide everyone into one of 3 categories: allies, indifferent pragmatists, and enemies. To do this, we'll start by asking, do we absolutely need this person's active support? If the answer is yes, whether because they're a top decision maker or simply know the email passwords, our only option is to buy their support. If there are multiple candidates for a given role, we'll pick the less qualified among them. We want someone who feels underutilized, someone who's been passed over for promotions. With less to lose, they'll more readily join our cause, where we've promised them a shiny new office. Some, of course, will be tempted to alert the authorities of our plan. Luckily, we anticipate this and raise the stakes. Your superiors are already on board, we tell them. Joining us should feel like the safe option. We've now established our small circle of allies, but that still leaves a wide cast of characters, ranging from powerful military commanders to glorified mall cops. To identify the real threats, we'll simply ask, is this person loyal to the ruling party? Our enemies are those for whom the answer is yes. Many will be loud but powerless figureheads. They may even incidentally help our cause thanks to their own unpopularity. The others we'll make sure are distracted at the time of the coup, off fighting some distant war, for example, or we may even create for them a wild goose chase. Everyone else, which constitutes the vast majority, are indifferent pragmatists. Not loyal to any particular party or ideology, they'll sit back in silence while the coup unfolds, waiting to see how things play out. No need to worry about them, we'll slowly win their support as we consolidate power. Which brings us to step 3, freeze. If we've carried out the first 2 steps well, this phase will seem shockingly easy. With our allies in place and awaiting instructions, one could argue the coup has already occurred, it's just that no one knows it yet. This, again, is what differentiates a coup. Although it's often performed by the military, it is not primarily a military operation. Ideally, in fact, no one will be killed or even hurt. It's best to avoid creating a martyr or risk breeding discontent. Besides, we have neither an advantage in strength nor numbers. We'll begin this phase by freezing all movement, both that of people and information. Airports will be shut down, TV stations taken off the air, roads blocked, and the internet cut. Lack of information will make civilian resistance difficult. The average person won't even know what's going on. The disorder will be indistinguishable from, say, a natural disaster. Next, while our allies form a perimeter around the capital, a small tactical team will covertly enter the palace and arrest the current government. Upon noticing the turmoil, whatever army, police, and security forces are outside the perimeter will make their way to it. But our secret weapon, remember, is chaos and confusion. At the perimeter, they'll discover not hostile foreign targets, but calm soldiers wearing their exact same uniforms. 9 times out of 10, Occam's razor will prevail. When faced with uncertainty, the vast majority of soldiers will do as they're trained, await further instructions, assuming incompetence. Even if they suspect something is fishy, few, if any, will risk their lives on a hunch. Once again, apathy will play in our favor. By now, the opposition has been silenced, the public thoroughly confused, and the physical symbols of power occupied. It may seem as though the coup is complete, but note the word symbols. Power is not merely the possession of the telephone on the resolute desk, but the odds that the person on the other end will follow the orders spoken into it. We may possess the telephone at this point, but one could say there effectively is no government. Our task is to somehow transform this symbolic power into actual power. What we're attempting is a sleight of hand trick. We begin by deceiving just one person, convincing them that we already have power. Their belief in our power thus becomes our foothold, something tangible we can point to as evidence of our authority. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, a lie that, we hope, becomes true by virtue of speaking it. It's faking it until you make it. But be careful. This positive feedback loop can also work against us. Slow down or lay bare the seams of our rule and resistance will develop. And as soon as one person resists, all others will be emboldened. Speed, therefore, is of the utmost importance. With each building we control, flag we raise, and law we pass, the greater the rebel or comply risk calculus will fall in our favor. In practical terms, this means as soon as possible we'll perform the ultimate coup cliché, a victorious televised address. This is why the old government was illegitimate, and this is why we needed to intervene for the good of the nation/democracy/economy. To increase our authoritative momentum, we'll immediately institute a dramatic change in policy, redistribute land, kick out foreigners, or do something else rash. Oh, and by the way, in case you don't see things the same way, there's no point resisting anyway. The battle has already been fought and won. Fill in the blanks. It's Mad Libs, really. Much of the international community will no doubt condemn our rule, but they will inevitably recognize it as it becomes clear they have no other choice. Now, although the active part of our coup is now over, statistically speaking, the most dangerous phase has only now begun. Recall from earlier the chart of coups since 1950. Of them, 242 were successful, and a remarkably even 244 were failures. What this means is that if, and granted this is a big if, your coup makes it past the planning stage and becomes public, it has an almost 50% chance of succeeding. Coups, as their similarity across time demonstrates, aren't really that difficult to pull off, at least in these countries. What is difficult is holding on to that power. That's because, if you think about it, a coup is both the product of a lack of legitimacy and a cause of it. Where they occur frequently, they become normalized.